A select circle of high-level individuals is observing you at this very moment, and I mean literally today or this week. They aren't watching in a creepy, obsessive manner, but rather with a profound sense of intrigue. It's more of a, how do they manage to pull that off type of curiosity. And the one phrase that keeps popping up in their private discussions about you is highly intelligent, exceptionally bright. They are silently analyzing you, making mental observations on how you handle the turbulence of your daily life, and they simply can't stop discussing it. Before this video is over, you will understand precisely why they are so fascinated, because it all boils down to two distinct behaviors of yours. Two practices so deeply embedded and natural to you that you likely don't even recognize how remarkably uncommon they are. So stick around, because I am going to deconstruct exactly what this prestigious group observes when they look in your direction. Consider it akin to an undiscovered classic. Picture a canvas hidden away in a dark, dusty loft, gathering cobwebs, largely ignored as the majority stroll. Past and view nothing more than an aged cloth with muted tones. However, a genuine art connoisseur, an elite spectator, steps inside and instantly spots the brilliance of a masterwork. They don't require an ornate golden frame or an engraved placard to recognize its true worth. They notice the intricate layers, the concealed profundity, and the meticulous brushstrokes that everyone else entirely misses. That is you. That is exactly who you are. Society is infatuated with the concept of undiscovered brilliance and the underdog who turns out to be a prodigy. This is not merely a poetic comparison. It is the actual way you navigate your existence. Your understated routines, your introverted nature, your absolute refusal to beg for the spotlight. These are not indicators of frailty or oddity. Rather, they are the signatures of a brilliant intellect that only the most perceptive, those who understand what to search for, can truly appreciate. All right, let's take a moment to really let this sink in. Visualize this scenario. There is a specific space out there. Perhaps it isn't a physical room, but rather a shared consciousness, a gathering of minds tuned into your specific wavelength. And your identity is mentioned. They inquire, have you paid attention to how they react when adversity strikes? And everyone subtly agrees because, indeed, they have seen it. They have witnessed you navigating through profound struggles, not imaginary dilemmas or trivial annoyances, but authentic, life-shifting obstacles. And rather than crumbling to pieces the way the vast majority would, and I state this without any condemnation, because most folks absolutely would collapse. You did something entirely different. You managed the situation. You validated your strength through your distinct actions and through the trials you have overcome. You have revealed to these observers a core aspect of yourself that the majority of humans never reveal to anyone. The truth of who you genuinely are when the heat is turned up. And that is the initial reason they are so thoroughly intrigued. Here is point number one. The primary reason this circle considers you brilliantly intelligent is your profound emotional acumen. And I don't mean that in some superficial greeting card sense. I mean, you possess a genuine grasp of feelings, your own and those of everyone else. You operate with deep intuition. You can assess an entire room instantly. You can read a person's true intentions. You can analyze your own internal emotional climate far better than practically anyone in your vicinity. You hold a degree of emotional sophistication that is frankly disturbing to individuals who completely lack it. You remain internally steady, even when your external circumstances have been completely chaotic and unpredictable. You carry this sharp perception, this silent capacity to translate what a feeling is genuinely trying to communicate, rather than merely snapping back like a marionette manipulated by invisible threads. Beyond all that, you possess profound empathy. You genuinely care for others. You carry a heart as massive as a galaxy. And this specific group recognizes it. Moreover, they possess an immense amount of respect for it. High-level thinkers don't seek out the loudest voices or the individuals trying to monopolize the dialogue. They search for those who attentively listen until the surrounding noise fades to silence. That person is you. You have likely felt like an outcast for the majority of your existence. But here is the profound twist. They aren't ignoring you. They are deeply analyzing you. They are characterizing you as possessing wisdom far beyond your actual age. Astoundingly profound wisdom. You communicate from a much deeper well than the average person can ever tap into. And here is what genuinely captivates them. They have observed you enduring incredibly harsh realities, including interactions with individuals who were aggressively unkind to you, people who attempted to trigger you, tried to push you off balance, and aimed to make you emotionally volatile, chaotic, and diminished. Yet, their efforts failed. They attempted their tactics and were entirely defeated. And this audience watched the entire scenario play out like a cinematic triumph. While the rest of the world is busy playing simple checkers, you have been engaging in multidimensional chess without even being consciously aware of it. Due to your emotional depth, you see directly through the manipulative tactics being deployed. You maintained a clear view of the grander narrative, even while you were trapped in the eye of the hurricane. Someone attempted to tamper with your self-perception, tried to infiltrate your thoughts to persuade you that your value was far less than it truly is. Yet, in response, you clung to a firm, unyielding conviction of your inherent worth. That isn't mere fortune. That is an internal fortress constructed piece by piece over time. That is what applied emotional maturity looks like. And this attentive audience realized that you refused to let yourself be dragged down into the mud. You never became spiteful. You never turned destructive, even in moments where you could have completely justified such reactions. And pay attention here. Portions of what you endured would have genuinely shattered a vast number of individuals. It would have sent them spiraling downward into a severe depression, a total psychological breakdown. Yet, this group observed you examining your predicament from a much more elevated perspective instead. You absolutely refused to let your volatile feelings obscure your rationality. You remained grounded enough to actually steer your way through the crisis rather than merely drowning within it, sinking below the surface. There is a very particular aura you radiate, a silent intensity that leaves individuals in powerful positions extremely intrigued about what you will do next, and that trait is incredibly scarce. It is the sort of presence that makes a crowded room hush and wonder, "Hold on a minute. How exactly are they pulling that off?" They are literally documenting how you manage turmoil, because your tranquility is never by chance. It is entirely deliberate. Furthermore, there is an undeniable aura indicating that you have undergone a massive personal metamorphosis. A previous iteration of yourself had to effectively melt away so that a much more resilient, genuine version could emerge. You endured the hurricane and arrived on the opposite shore harboring more love for yourself, not less, which is, frankly, the exact opposite of what the majority anticipated. It might even be the reverse of what specific individuals secretly desired for your outcome. Because here is the harsh reality that society rarely admits. Certain individuals do not merely inflict pain upon you unintentionally. On occasion, people are actively attempting to diminish your presence, striving to extinguish your brilliance because your radiance was simply too uncomfortable for them to handle. Your personal evolution directly jeopardized their secure bubble of familiarity. And when their malicious strategy completely backfires, when you emerge more rooted, more glowing, and more confident in your own skin than ever before, it is absolutely breathtaking to observe. In fact, breathtaking is the exact adjective this collective continually uses. I am going to be entirely honest with you. The vast majority of the population cannot process these two traits you exhibit because it compels them to confront their own flaws. It isn't merely overanalyzing. To the trained observer, what you are constantly doing is advanced pattern recognition. Perhaps a number of you have navigated severe anxiety in your past, authentic terror, genuine moments of wondering how you could possibly survive, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. with a constricted chest and a spiraling brain. And perhaps you are still processing fragments of those experiences. Yet even amidst that darkness, this group notices you leaning heavily upon your inner voice, striving to locate that elevated viewpoint rather than allowing the panic to consume you entirely. They perceive you as incredibly courageous, truly. They see someone marching directly into uncharted territory rather than fleeing from it. An individual breaking free from their protective casing, escaping the confines of familiarity, and tackling obstacles head-on. And if there happens to be someone out in the world who perfectly mirrors your energy, someone whose evolution is intricately interwoven with your own in a bizarre, profound manner, this circle recognizes that bond as well. They observe the two of you locating one another and recovering in unison, as if your distinct journeys were inevitably destined to intersect at the precise, perfect second. Many of you who are tuning into this are innate healers without even consciously attempting to be. You express your personal recovery process in a manner that actively assists other individuals in their own healing, whether that is manifested through your spoken words, your online expressions, or the way you support others during their most painful chapters. You might currently act as, or possess the potential to be, a profound guide for others without requiring any formal title or piece of paper. And that is a massive reason why this collective holds you in such high regard. You transformed your suffering into a valuable tool rather than just a heavy weight you drag along in isolation. Now, let us move to the second major point. This is trait number 2, and it is the element that permanently solidifies their admiration, because having deep emotional awareness is formidable on its own. However, what truly has this audience in awe is that you combine it seamlessly with rational, pragmatic intellect. Allow me to elaborate. You are not merely drifting endlessly in a sea of emotions. You actually execute. You arrive at stable, logical conclusions. You possess this exceptionally scarce hybrid where you can be intensely spiritually aligned and intuitive on one side while remaining entirely rooted in reality and sensible on the other. If you solely possess the mystical aspect, certain folks might dismiss you as a bit unfocused or detached from reality, but that is not who you are. You absorb what your gut instinct whispers, and you actively implement it. You discover tangible, actionable remedies. You grasp the internal revelation, and you anchor it directly into your practical, everyday routine. That fusion of experiencing profound emotion and responding with deep wisdom is precisely why they continually label you as highly intelligent rather than merely highly sensitive. You are not an unsolvable puzzle. You are simply composed in a dialect that the majority of society has not yet bothered to master. Allow me to illustrate a scenario, because I need you to truly internalize this, not just superficially hear my words. Reflect on a specific memory. Perhaps it was a social event, a dinner party, or simply a circle of acquaintances chatting, where an individual made a remark and the entire space erupted in laughter. It's a favorite scenario of mine. That distinct type of collective amusement confirming the joke perfectly hit its mark. And you simultaneously formulated a response in your mind. A retort that was wittier, a comment that would have struck with far more impact. You sensed the thought materializing instantaneously. The perfect timing, the precise angle, the absolute right vocabulary. Your nervous system registered it before your brain even completed the thought process. You parted your lips to speak, and then you deliberately held back. You offered a grin instead. You allowed their spotlight to remain theirs. You opted to be the individual who elevates the mood of others rather than the one who forcefully seizes the center stage. And this is precisely where the situation becomes fascinating, because there was an element of your consciousness lingering silently in the shadows that recognized exactly what you were prepared to articulate and precisely how the dynamic of the room would have altered had you spoken. That fragment of your personality would have captivated the entire audience effortlessly. Yet, you selected the gentle smile. You purposefully chose to play it small. And an internal shift occurred right then, resembling a heavy door gently shutting in the recesses of your psyche. Not a single soul in that gathering registered what you willingly sacrificed. They merely perceived a warm, benevolent person chuckling politely at another individual's humor. And you departed from that interaction experiencing dual sensations simultaneously. A sense of relief that you avoided the vulnerability, mixed with a silent, lingering sorrow beneath the surface that you comprehended perfectly but never articulated to a single living soul. And here is the realization this elite circle desperately wants you to absorb. That silent sorrow is not a flaw. That ache is undeniable evidence that an entire, vibrant version of you still resides within, still breathing, merely anticipating the green light to occupy a larger footprint in the world, your own green light. You have dedicated a massive portion of your existence to ensuring you are accommodating, effortless to be near, simple to appreciate, easy to share a space with. And that capability, that immense graciousness, is completely valid and highly important. Yet, buried beneath that accommodating exterior lies a different frequency. A voice that is authentically yours, but significantly more liberated, far less cautious, and entirely unbothered by the consequences of speaking the raw truth. And whenever you sense that magnetic tug, on peaceful Sunday mornings, in serene pockets of time, during those brief 30 seconds before your analytical brain boots up and begins micromanaging your reality once more, that sensation is not arbitrary. That is the most vibrant, authentic fraction of your soul attempting to capture your focus. Reflect on the sheer volume of your lifetime you have devoted to analyzing an environment before you even physically enter it, actively calculating what is acceptable to voice, what is permissible to desire, and what is safe to visibly feel or express verbally. That requires immense intellect, authentic brilliance. The vast majority of the population remains blissfully unaware they are even engaging in such behavior. But you are. You absolutely do. A distinct part of you has remained hyper-vigilant this entire time, observing yourself meticulously cater to the ease and comfort of the crowd while silently burying your personal desires. And this perceptive audience has been tracking that exact behavioral loop as well. And rather than condemning you for this tendency, they comprehend exactly the heavy toll it has taken on you. And they recognize precisely the immense fortitude you had to summon simply to keep operating, to continue showing up, and to remain compassionate while hauling that massive hidden weight. Here is an additional observation they have made. You possess relentless endurance, truly, astonishingly persistent grit. You may have faced individuals who continuously attacked you, relentlessly, time and time again, attempting to shatter your resolve, baiting you for an emotional outburst, trying to extract a reaction just to validate their own illusion of dominance over you. And yet, you refuse to collapse. Truthfully, with every single failed assault they mounted, it only served to highlight just how impenetrable you truly are. Because if you pause and consider it, if you were genuinely fragile, they wouldn't have been forced to attack you so repeatedly. The reality that they had to continually return is the ultimate evidence that their initial 100 efforts were utterly useless. That isn't a fluke. That is your unyielding toughness presenting itself in the empirical evidence, so to speak. And amidst all that chaos, an internal transformation began to take root. You ceased relying on outside variables to provide your emotional anchor. You began forging that stability internally, protecting yourself from external turbulence. When you found yourself unable to dictate the chaos unfolding outside of you, you seized command of the environment within you. Your perspective, your internal monologue, your foundational belief in your own inherent value. And this evolution transformed you into a beacon of consistency within your own narrative. Consequently, outsiders began to recognize that radiance as well. And that phenomenon is certainly no coincidence. The moment you anchor yourself, embodying tranquility and unwavering self-assurance, you naturally begin drawing in situations and individuals that align perfectly with your upgraded vibration. It is fundamentally basic cause and effect, sometimes disguised as something ethereal or magical, but truly, whatever architecture you construct internally will inevitably manifest in your external reality, without fail. Furthermore, there is a recurring narrative of you being uniquely, visibly distinct from the general population surrounding you. And for an extended period, the divergence may have felt like a heavy burden rather than a superpower. Perhaps you squandered years concealing fragments of your identity because standing out felt hazardous or highly vulnerable. It felt as though it magnetically attracted criticism. Perhaps you are an individual who requires significant periods of silence, an abundance of deep isolation, and the figures in your orbit, peers, relatives, romantic partners, constantly interrogated this trait, asking, why do you demand such distance? Why do you insist on being secluded so often? As if the simple desire to exist without putting on a theatrical performance for an audience was a severe character defect. And it is highly likely that this scrutiny originated from insecure individuals who demanded relentless proximity simply to feel emotionally safe, and who misinterpreted your absolute necessity for breathing room as a personal dismissal, rather than recognizing it for what it genuinely was, essential self-preservation. However, here is the profound reality that this elite group wants you to fully internalize. You require that absolute stillness, because that is the only environment where you can vividly hear your own internal compass. We are all thrust into a society that subtly coerces us to conform, to assimilate, to avoid triggering anyone else's insecurities with our unique attributes. And a massive portion of society wastes their entire existence managing that societal weight so effectively that they completely forget their authentic identity buried beneath the facade. You refuse to allow that erasure to happen entirely, even when the price of defiance was steep. Each and every time you withdrew into your solitary space, you were returning to your origin, reconnecting with the core version of yourself that thrives before all the societal static, the endless performing, and the exhausting task of regulating everyone else's emotional state. That behavior isn't being antisocial. That is a vital act of self-rescue. And you have been executing this survival tactic intuitively for decades, long before you possess the psychological terminology to describe it. And currently, with increasing frequency, you are beginning to actively relish that solitary silence rather than harboring guilt over it. That persistent, nagging whisper in the recesses of your brain that historically suggested you were somehow broken for requiring this isolation. It is fading into the background. You are beginning to firmly believe that your craving for solitude is not a glitch. It is simply your architectural design. And structuring your existence to support your authentic wiring, rather than bending to fit everyone else's assumed demands, is unequivocally one of the most brilliant maneuvers a human being can pull off. There is another fascinating detail this observant circle has registered. You are evolving into someone who is authentically hopeful, but not in a foolish, delusional manner. You are optimistic in a gritty, combat-proven sense. You have stared directly into catastrophic outcomes. You understand intimately what pure terror tastes like, and despite all of that, you have navigated your way to a mental space where you rise each morning and consciously opt to focus on potential rather than impending disaster. That is not living in denial. That is a highly refined skill. It is the ability to analyze the exact same grim data as everyone else and intentionally decide to seek out the timeline where victory is achieved. Maintaining a grounded perspective does not require you to abandon the belief that positive outcomes can materialize. On many occasions, the most pragmatic, realistic action you can take is to fiercely believe in the remaining possibilities. Beneath all your layers, you are also an exceptionally solid ally, a genuinely incredible presence to have in one's corner. You are fiercely devoted, expansive, and deeply giving. You are the specific type of human who consistently arrives when called, and tragically, that is exactly the magnificent trait that manipulative individuals exploited. Indeed, they viewed your boundless giving as a vulnerability to be mined rather than a beautiful offering, and they drained it, yet instead of allowing that trauma to shrink your spirit or make you so defensively walled off that you completely exiled humanity, the experience provided ultimate clarity. It revealed to you precisely the caliber of your own soul. They were utterly incapable of extinguishing that radiant part of your identity. If anything, their pathetic attempts to drain your benevolence only served as undeniable proof of how pure and authentic that goodness truly is. You simply cannot fabricate the level of deep compassion that predators attempt to harvest. That depth only belongs to individuals who authentically possess it in their core. So let us weave this narrative all the way back to the starting point, back to the exact reason this elite circle is expressing, the profound sentiments they are sharing regarding your character. Let us speak absolute truth here. You have perpetually carried a deep, instinctual, knowing that you were designed for a much grander purpose. Consider this message, the ultimate validation you have been patiently waiting to receive. It isn't merely one isolated trait. It is the masterful synthesis of them all. The capacity to experience emotions with profound intensity while simultaneously maintaining razor-sharp logical clarity. The ability to be completely devastated by a traumatic event and yet still locate the stable, practical path to step forward. The strategy of fiercely defending your mental sanctuary through required isolation while simultaneously remaining one of the most fiercely compassionate, dependable individuals anyone could ever hope to encounter. The reality that you have been pushed to the absolute brink repeatedly by those who desperately wish to diminish your presence, and yet you continuously emerged more complete and powerful rather than fractured. That is the exact brand of genius they are analyzing. Not academic memorization, not random facts, but the authentic, raw power. The sheer capability to absorb every ounce of pain and still operate at a high level. To continue evolving, to continually select compassion over toxic resentment, to constantly opt for pragmatic progression over disorganized panic. That is the true definition of highly intelligent in this context. And that is precisely the reason they are entirely unable to stop praising you. Stay with this thought for one more moment, because the second you view these two distinct characteristics through their elevated perspective, your entire self-perception will be permanently altered. And here is the core takeaway I want you to carry with you today. You do not require this elite circle's approval to recognize this truth within your own soul. However, it is quite validating, is it not? To finally hear it articulated clearly. To have a voice defined the profound reality you have silently carried for ages but lacked the proper vocabulary to express. You have been putting in the grueling effort. You have been enduring, evolving, and purposefully maintaining your compassion in a society that relentlessly provided you with endless justifications to become callous and cold. That inner spark that still yearns for grand achievements, that still deeply resonates with the magnetic draw of tranquil dawns, that knows with absolute certainty what truth it would vocalize if the environment ever felt secure enough to speak freely. That vital essence has not vanished. It has merely been biding its time. And every single trial you have conquered, every single boundary you finally established, every instance you prioritized your own mental equilibrium over catering to another person's fragile ego, has been strategically paving the way for this exact pivotal crossroad. The precise second you begin audibly placing your faith in that authentic version of yourself in the real, physical world, and not merely during those fleeting 30 seconds of silence before your analytical brain boots up for the day, you are precisely as brilliant, as formidably competent, and as thoroughly prepared as this observant collective already recognizes you to be. The singular step remaining in this entire process is for you to completely and unapologetically believe it yourself. That is everything.